Imagine the creak of oak planks as a Viking longship bends with the waves, carrying warriors to distant shores. These ships weren't just tools of war, they were floating homes, trading posts, and even graves. Tonight, let's settle into the rhythm of the sea and uncover how these ships connected a vast, silent empire. Before the famous longships carved through northern seas, smaller boats already moved through Baltic waters. These early vessels from around 700 AD had simple designs. Builders made them by hollowing out tree trunks or fastening planks together with wooden pegs. In Sweden's Vendel region, archaeologists found clues about these first ships. They uncovered boat graves from the 6th to 8th centuries. The buried vessels show how shipbuilding slowly improved. Builders began adding side planks to expand the hull. They used iron rivets instead of just wooden pegs. These changes made ships sturdier for rougher waters. The Hjortspring boat from Denmark shows an even older style. Dating to about 350 BC, it was made from 5 wide planks stitched together with rope. This early design could carry about 24 men. It moved well in calm fjords, but wouldn't survive open ocean storms. Over centuries, builders learned what worked through trial and error. Shipwrights began shaping hulls to ride higher in waves. They added more planks to make sides taller. The keel became stronger to handle ocean currents. By the 700 SAD, ships could cross the North Sea safely. This let traders reach England and warriors raid coastal towns. The real breakthrough came when builders mastered overlapping planks. This clinker-built style made ships both light and strong. Workers bent oak planks over fires to curve them just right. They sealed seams with animal hair and pine tar. A well-made ship could flex in storms without breaking apart. One special find shows this progress. At Nydam in southern Denmark, 3 ships from 400 AD were preserved in a bog. The largest is 23 meters long, with iron rivets holding its oak planks. It already had features that would define later longships, a pointed bow and stern for cutting through waves. But it still used steering oars on both sides instead of one. As the Viking Age began around 800 AD, all these improvements came together. Ships could now cross open water reliably. They had enough space for crews and cargo. The shallow draft let them sail up rivers or land on beaches. This let Vikings reach places other Europeans couldn't. These ships became tools of trade as much as war. A merchant might carry furs south and bring back silver. Fishermen could venture farther offshore for bigger catches. Families used them to settle new lands in the North Atlantic. All these uses spread Norse culture across vast distances. Discoveries like the Oseberg ship show how far shipbuilding had come by the 9th century. It had graceful curves and intricate carvings, both beautiful and functional. The mast could be raised or lowered, depending on need. Oar holes had covers to keep out water when sailing. Every detail served a purpose. These vessels linked Scandinavia's scattered communities. News and goods traveled faster by water than land. A ship could reach most towns within a few days' sail. This network let Vikings share ideas and customs across great distances. Even remote farms stayed connected to wider trade routes. Winter was the season for repairs and new ships. Families stockpiled timber all year for this work. Builders selected oak trees with natural curves for key parts. They shaped wood while it was green and easier to bend. Each step followed methods perfected over generations. A good ship might last 20, 30 years with proper care. The ships from earlier centuries were just the start. Later, longships built on these foundations. They kept improving details like sail shape and weight distribution. But all the key elements first appeared in these Baltic boats. Without them, the Viking Age might never have happened. Next time you see a modern boat, think how long it took to learn these skills. Centuries of observation went into each hull curve and joint. Early builders had no design manuals, just experience passed down. Their quiet work made possible all that followed. The sea that once divided people now brought them together. Tonight, let these early shipbuilders guide you toward rest. Picture their careful hands shaping wet oak by firelight. Hear the rhythmic tap of mallets driving iron rivets. The same stars they navigated by still shine above us now. Breathe out and let their story carry you into calm waters. In 1904, farmers near Oslo uncovered something unusual in a large burial mound. Their shovels hit wood instead of soil. Archaeologists soon realized they'd found a complete Viking ship, buried for over 1,000 years. The blue clay had preserved everything. Wooden carvings, textiles, even the ship itself. This was the Oseberg ship, Norway's most stunning archaeological discovery. The ship was built around 820 AD on Norway's west coast. At 22 meters long, it could hold 30 rowers plus a helmsman. Each oar hole had a shield holder attached. The mast could be raised for sailing or lowered when rowing. Every detail showed skilled craftsmanship, from the curved prow to the carefully fitted planks. This wasn't just any ship. It was built for someone important. Inside the ship, workers found 2 women buried with extraordinary riches. One was about 50 years old. The other was around 80 and had a noticeable hunchback. Forensic studies showed the older woman suffered from an illness that may have given her facial hair and a deep voice. Some believe these traits made people think she had magic powers. Both women were laid to rest with objects for the afterlife. The grave goods tell us about their high status. There was a wooden cart with intricate carvings of animals and Viking scenes. Archaeologists found beds, chests, and combs, all beautifully decorated. Dozens of everyday items were included too, like kitchen tools and farming equipment. 5 carved animal heads on poles may have been used in rituals. The women had fine woolen dresses and imported silks. One surprising find was a slave woman about 50 years old. DNA tests show her ancestors came from near the Caspian Sea, far to the east. This proves Vikings had wide trade networks. The slaves' presence suggests the buried women were powerful enough to have servants join them in death. Multiple sledges and a tent show they traveled in style when alive. Historians still debate who these women were. Some think they were queens or priestesses. Their ship had carvings that may show the owner's image. The older woman's unusual appearance might have made her seem mystical. In Viking society, people with differences were sometimes seen as having special gifts. She may have been a healer or spiritual leader. The ship itself was more than transportation. The carvings and burial ritual suggest it helped carry spirits to the afterlife. Every detail had meaning, from the animal designs to the placement of objects. The burial was like a play telling a sacred story. The blue clay preserved this scene perfectly, giving us a snapshot of Viking beliefs. Women in Viking culture could hold more power than in many other places at the time. They managed farms when men were away. Some became traders or craft specialists. The Oseberg burial shows women could also be spiritual leaders. The grave goods suggest these women controlled wealth and directed important rituals. This challenges old ideas about Viking society being only male-dominated. The burial mound was carefully constructed. Workers dug a pit for the ship, then lowered it in. They placed the women and artifacts inside before covering everything with blue clay. This sealed out air, preventing decay. The mound's shape may have had spiritual meaning too. Over time, grass grew over it, hiding the secret for centuries. The Oseberg ship's design advanced Viking technology too. It was the oldest known Scandinavian sail ship with preserved rigging when found. The mast fitting and sail controls were innovative for their time. Later ships improved on these ideas, allowing longer voyages. But this was already beyond simple rowing boats. It could cross open seas. Preserving the ship after excavation was difficult. The wood began to dry and crack. Experts worked for years to treat it with chemicals that would keep its shape. Today it sits in a museum in Oslo, where visitors can see its elegant lines up close. The carvings still show incredible detail after 12 centuries. Finding a ship burial with women was unexpected in 1904. Most known Viking graves held men. The Oseberg discovery changed how we view Norse society. It proved women could have great status and wealth. Their burial was as elaborate as any king's. This find made archaeologists look differently at other graves too. The older woman's condition tells another story. She lived a long life despite disabilities that would have been hard to manage then. Someone cared for her and valued her enough for this burial. Her community respected her differences rather than shunning them. This gives us insight into Viking attitudes toward health and ability. DNA tests on the younger woman show she was related to people from the Volga River region. This matches Viking sagas about travels to Russia and beyond. The silk fabrics in the grave likely came from Byzantium or further east. Even in remote Norway, people were connected to distant trade routes. The women's lives touched many places. 5 animal head posts stood in the grave. Some scholars think these were used in religious ceremonies. They're carved with intricate interlocking patterns and beast faces. Similar designs appear on other objects from the ship, showing this artwork had special meaning. The heads might have represented spirits or gods. As you think about this discovery tonight, picture the buried ship waiting in darkness. Imagine the women who commanded such respect in life. They traveled far, saw many things, and left this carefully prepared memorial. Their story has lasted longer than they could have dreamed. The same stars they sailed under still shine now, unchanged after all these years. The oars are still, the ship at rest. Let their quiet mystery ease your mind towards sleep. The secret to Viking ships lay in how they moved with the water rather than against it. Picture oak planks bending slightly as waves pass beneath the hull. This flexibility came from the clinker-built technique. Workers overlapped wooden boards like fish scales, then fastened them with iron rivets. Each plank curved outward slightly, creating space for the ship to flex without breaking apart. The planks themselves were carefully made using the mirror-cut oak method. Builders split whole tree trunks lengthwise to create matching pairs of planks. This kept the wood grain running straight along each board's length. Fresh timber was easier to shape than dried wood. When wet, these planks became more flexible without losing strength. The curved shape of each plank helped the ship roll with waves instead of resisting them. Between each overlapping plank, workers stuffed thin woolen thread soaked in pine tar. This sealed small gaps while still allowing movement. The seal had to be tight enough to keep water out, but flexible enough to bend. Too rigid, and the ship would crack in rough seas. Too loose, and it would leak. Getting this balance right took years of practice. Inside the hull, ribs made from naturally curved oak branches gave structure. These weren't nailed tightly to the planks. Instead, builders lashed them with ropes made from whale baleen or seal skin. These natural fibers stretched slightly when wet, allowing more movement. The whole ship could twist a little as waves passed underneath. Modern engineers call this working, the way a ship adjusts to changing water pressure. A replica called Saga Oseberg was built to test these methods. Craftsmen used the same tools and techniques as Viking shipbuilders. When sailed in rough weather, the replica showed how well the design worked. The overlapping planks shifted slightly with each wave, spreading stress across the whole hull. No single part took too much strain. This let the ship handle storms that would break stiffer vessels. The shallow draft was another key feature. Viking ships sat high in the water, with only about 3 feet submerged. This let them ride over waves instead of plowing through them. Less hull in the water meant less resistance when moving. It also reduced the force of impacts when hitting waves. The bow and stern curved upward to help the ship rise with swells. Sailors could feel when the design worked right. In calm seas, the ship might creak softly as planks rubbed together. During storms, the noises became louder, but the hull held. Water might spray between planks, but serious leaks were rare. The flexible joints acted like shock absorbers, spreading forces evenly. A modern rigid hull would transmit every wave impact directly to the frame. The sail added to this flexibility. Made of wool or linen, it could stretch slightly in strong winds. This prevented sudden jolts that might snap ropes or masts. Sailors adjusted tension constantly, loosening it when gusts hit. The mast itself wasn't fixed rigidly. It could tilt slightly to balance wind pressure. All these small movements added up to a smoother ride. Speed came from this same flexibility. A stiff ship fights the water, wasting energy. Viking hulls bent just enough to match wave shapes. This reduced drag while maintaining speed. Warriors relied on this when raiding. Fast approach, quick escape. Traders needed it for long voyages, where slow progress meant more days at sea. Storm survival stories from sagas mention ships riding like seals over waves. The comparison makes sense. A seal's body flexes as it moves through water. Viking ships did the same, their oak planks acting like a second skin. In extreme conditions, crews might lower sails and let the ship drift. The flexible hull could survive pounding that would shatter stiffer designs. Repairing damage was easier too. Individual planks could be replaced without rebuilding the whole ship. If a plank cracked, workers removed its rivets and inserted a new one. The overlapping design meant adjacent planks supported each other during repairs. Even major fixes could be done on distant shores with basic tools. This engineering wisdom came from generations of observation. Shipbuilders noticed how different shapes handled waves. They saw which joints lasted and which failed. No written manuals existed, just hands-on knowledge passed from master to apprentice. Each ship improved slightly on previous designs. Modern boat builders still study these methods. The principles work as well now as they did 1,000 years ago. Flexible hulls are gentler on passengers and equipment. They last longer because stress doesn't concentrate in weak points. Viking shipwrights understood this without physics equations, just by watching how wood and water interact. Tonight, imagine being aboard such a ship. Feel the slight give of the deck beneath your feet. Hear the soft creak of oak adjusting to the sea's rhythm. There's comfort in how everything bends just enough without breaking. The same principle applies to sleep, letting your mind and body find their natural flex. The Vikings knew when to resist and when to yield. Their ships carried this wisdom in every curving plank. As you rest, picture those oak boards riding gentle swells. The same moon that guided Viking navigators now shines through your window. The sea that tested their ships now whispers in the distance. All is flexible, all is strong. Let this thought carry you into deeper calm, where even storms become lullabies. The ship knows how to bend, just as you know how to rest. There's nothing to hold tight against, only the quiet movement of night. A Viking navigator standing on deck holds a clear crystal up to the gray sky. Clouds hide the sun completely, yet he slowly turns the stone in his fingers. The crew watches as he nods toward a specific direction. The ship adjusts its course accordingly. This may be how Vikings found their way across the North Atlantic without compasses, using special crystals called sunstones. The open ocean presents constant navigation challenges. Without landmarks, sailors must rely on other methods. Viking sagas mention sunstones, but don't explain how they worked. Modern researchers believe these were Iceland spar crystals that could locate the sun's position even through cloud cover. The crystals detect polarized light patterns that human eyes can't see naturally. Iceland spar splits light into two beams when viewed from certain angles. By rotating the crystal, a navigator could find where the two beams match in brightness. This alignment points toward the sun's hidden position. Tests show this works even at twilight or through thin cloud layers. The method isn't perfect, but provides enough accuracy for general direction finding. Experimental archaeologists have tested replica sunstones under North Atlantic conditions. In 2013, a team sailed a Viking-style ship from Norway to Labrador using only ancient navigation methods. They found sunstones worked about 60% of the time when clouds obscured the sun completely. On other days, weather conditions made the technique unreliable. This matches historical accounts of Viking voyages taking longer in poor visibility. Vikings likely combined multiple navigation methods for better accuracy. On clear days, they used the sun's shadow stick to determine direction. At night, they watched the North Star's fixed position. Migrating birds and whale paths sometimes indicated nearby land. Wave patterns changed near coastlines. Smells carried farther over water. Pine resin from forests or seaweed from sheltered bays. The sagas mention other tools like bearing dials, wooden discs with markings for directions. These may have worked with sunstones for more precise readings. Some archaeologists think crews carried multiple stones of different types. Each crystal reacted slightly differently to light, providing checks against errors. Navigators probably compared several indicators before setting courses. Sunstone navigation required practice and patience. Correct readings depend on holding the crystal at exact angles. Minor hand tremors could change results. Skilled users develop techniques to minimize errors, like bracing elbows against the ship's side. They likely took multiple readings over time, rather than trusting single observations. Experience helped distinguish accurate signals from false ones. Cloud thickness affected performance. Thin, high clouds let enough polarized light through for readings. Thick storm clouds often blocked all usable light. Fog proved particularly challenging since water droplets scatter light unpredictably. Navigators might wait hours for better conditions rather than risk incorrect bearings. The sagas mention ships slowing or stopping during prolonged bad weather. Night navigation posed different challenges. Without sunlight, Vikings relied on stars when visible. The North Star provided a fixed northern reference. Other stars' movements helped estimate time and direction. On overcast nights, crews might steer by wind and wave patterns until dawn. Some researchers believe they used bioluminescent plankton in wakewater to maintain straight courses. Landfall approaches required special care, Vikings often sailed along coasts when possible. Near shorelines, they watched for known rock formations or distinctive trees. Watercolor changed over shallow areas. Seabird behavior often signaled nearby land before it became visible. Nighttime shore approaches sometimes used fire beacons lit by advance parties. The Vinland voyages demonstrated these techniques' effectiveness. Crossing the North Atlantic to Newfoundland required sustained open water navigation. Successful landings suggest reliable methods despite variable conditions. Modern recreations show such trips were possible using period tools, though not easy. Errors in judgment could send ships hundreds of miles off course. Sunstones weren't perfect solutions, but they filled critical gaps. Magnetic compasses hadn't reached Scandinavia yet. The few existing navigation tools worked only in ideal conditions. Sunstones provided information when other methods failed. Their value wasn't in precision but availability. Better an approximate bearing than none at all during week-long cloud cover. Modern experiments continue to explore Viking navigation possibilities. Researchers test different crystal types under various weather conditions. Some studies examine how onboard motion affects readings. Others investigate optimal crystal sizes and shapes. Each experiment adds pieces to the understanding puzzle without providing definitive answers. We may never know exact Viking navigation techniques. No confirmed sunstones have been found in archaeological contexts. The Iceland spar theory remains plausible but unproven. What's clear is that Vikings traveled vast distances reliably enough to establish trade routes and settlements. Their methods, whatever the details, worked consistently in challenging environments. Tonight, think about those long-ago navigators peering through crystals at clouded skies. Imagine the concentration required to interpret faint light patterns, the patience to wait for confirmations, the courage to trust those readings when land lay days away. Their knowledge connected distant shores as surely as their ships did. Now close your eyes and picture the light, filtering through an Iceland spar crystal after all these centuries. The same subtle glow that guided travelers home still lingers at the edges of perception. Let its steady presence anchor you as you drift toward sleep's quiet shores. The sea that tested the Vikings now rocks you gently. Their stones still catch the light, even in darkness. The wooden deck of a Viking ship smelled of tar and salt, with fish hanging to dry between the rowing benches. Each vessel carried everything needed for weeks at sea: food, tools, spare sails. Crews stored supplies in carved wooden chests and leather bags lashed to the sides. Water dripped from woolen sails overhead as men moved carefully in the cramped space. Food preservation methods were simple but effective. Fish were split open and salted or smoked to last longer. Archaeologists find bones from herring, cod, and haddock in Viking-age waste pits near old harbors. Meat might be dried into jerky or packed in barrels with brine. Bread came as hard flatbreads that wouldn't spoil easily. On longer trips, crews likely caught fresh fish to supplement stored meals. Fresh water posed the biggest challenge. Small wooden casks held drinking supplies, carefully rationed. Some ships may have carried hollowed-out animal bladders as extra containers. Rainwater could be collected in sails during storms. If supplies ran low, crews might stop at islands to refill from streams. The sagas mention ships putting ashore just for this purpose during Atlantic crossings. Sleeping arrangements varied by ship size. On smaller boats, men probably took turns resting on folded sails or between cargo. Larger vessels had more space. The Oseberg ship's deck could accommodate sleeping mats for the whole crew. In cold weather, wool blankets and fur pelts provided warmth. Some long ships carried hide tents for shore camps during stops. Waste management required practical solutions. The crew likely used designated areas over the ship's side when possible. For privacy, a sail might be hung as a temporary screen. On extended voyages, hygiene became increasingly difficult. Bathing happened when weather permitted, either in rainwater collected on deck or during stops at freshwater sources. Clothes were washed in seawater using sand as a scrub when needed. Personal items were kept minimal but practical. Each man carried a belt knife for eating and repairs. Wooden cups and bowls were shared among the crew. Combs made from antler or bone appear frequently in ship burials. Clean hair mattered even at sea. Some men wore small whetstones for sharpening tools hanging from their belts. The ship's design itself helped manage daily life. Oar holes had covers to keep out water when not rowing. Mats woven from reeds cushioned the deck where men sat or slept. The mast could be lowered to create shaded areas when the sun was strong. Even the curved sides of the hull created slightly more headroom than flat walls would. Cooking happened on a small iron hearth placed on sand in the ship's center. Crews burned driftwood or charcoal when available. Too much smoke might reveal their position to enemies. Meals were simple. Stews boiled in iron pots, fish roasted on sticks over coals. Bread might be toasted on flat stones heated in the fire. Some ships carried stone querns for grinding grain into flour when needed. Storage space dictated what could be brought. Warriors heading to battle packed weapons, shields, and armor carefully wrapped in cloth. Traders filled their holds with trade goods, furs, amber, iron bars. Explorers carried extra ropes, spare sailcloth, and materials for repairs. Everything had to be secured against shifting during storms, while remaining accessible when needed. Sound carried strangely over water, affecting communication. Crews developed hand signals for common commands during silent approaches. Songs and stories passed time on long voyages, but stopped near enemy shores. The creak of ropes and splash of waves provided constant background noise against which all other sounds stood out sharply. Night brought different routines. When anchored near shore, a watchman stayed awake while others slept. At sea, ships sometimes drifted with lowered sails overnight when landmarks weren't visible. The helmsman relied on stars to maintain course until dawn. Some crews kept sheltered lanterns burning, more for morale than actual light in the vast darkness. Children sometimes traveled on these ships too. Families moving to new settlements brought their households aboard. Girls learned to mend sails while boys practiced steering the long ship's side rudder. Even dogs came along. Their remains found in some ship burials suggest they were valued crew members who warned of approaching dangers. Ships changed function as needed throughout voyages. Fishing vessels became troop transports when warriors boarded. Trading ships turned into raiding parties by adding shields along the sides. The same boat that carried linen and silver one month might transport captured slaves the next. This adaptability made each vessel multi-purpose. Weather dictated daily rhythms more than any schedule. Fair winds meant sailing while conditions lasted. Storms required all hands to secure cargo and ride out the waves. Fog brought tense watches for hidden rocks or other ships. The crew's survival depended on reading changing skies and responding correctly. Knowledge earned through experience rather than books. Mental endurance mattered as much as physical strength on long trips. Men accustomed to farm routines with clear days and nights adjusted to the timelessness of open water. Some kept track of days by carving notches in wood, while others simply worked until exhausted enough to sleep wherever space allowed. The ship became its own small world, carrying everything needed to sustain life between distant shores. All the comforts of land were absent: no soft beds, abundant food, or solid ground underfoot. Yet these floating wooden spaces enabled Vikings to reach farther than any European people before them. Tonight, picture yourself aboard such a vessel. Feel the slight sway as waves pass underneath. Hear the creak of oak timbers flexing with each movement. The same stars that guided Viking navigators still shine overhead as you settle into sleep. Their ships are long gone, but the quiet rhythm of water against wood remains, steady, patient, carrying you toward rest, just as it once carried warriors toward new horizons. Let the gentle rocking motion ease your thoughts, as it eased tired crews after long days at sea. All is quiet now. All is calm. The watch has been set, and you may rest. The Volga River flows quietly in the moonlight, its dark waters barely rippling as oars dip in and out. This was the highway of the Rus Vikings, Scandinavian traders and warriors who moved deep into Eastern Europe. Their ships were lighter than ocean longships, built to navigate winding rivers rather than open seas. Crews had to be ready to pull these vessels onto land and drag them between waterways when needed. The portage system let Vikings access multiple river networks. Near Novgorod, archaeological finds show how they moved ships from the Baltic to the Volga watershed. Crews unloaded cargo, then used logs as rollers to drag ships overland. The distance might be a mile or more before reaching the next navigable stream. This exhausting work opened trade routes stretching from Scandinavia to the Caspian Sea. Novgorod became a key hub for this network. Excavations there reveal Scandinavian-style jewelry, weapons and tools dating to the 9th century. Arabic silver dirhams appear in hoards buried near the city. These coins came from trade with Islamic merchants further south. Vikings valued silver by weight, often melting coins to make ingots or jewelry. The sheer volume found suggests frequent trading activity. River travel differed from sea voyages in important ways. Currents and sandbars changed constantly, requiring local knowledge. Ships had to be light enough to portage, yet sturdy enough for rough waters. The Rus adapted by building narrower vessels with removable masts. Oars provided most power since river winds were unreliable. Shallow drafts let them navigate waters only 3 feet deep. The Dnieper River led south toward Constantinople, while the Volga went east to the Caspian. Both routes had dangers. The Dnieper's rapids required careful navigation, with scouts checking water levels ahead. On the Volga, the Khazar Khanate controlled key sections, demanding tolls from passing ships. Vikings sometimes paid, sometimes fought, and often did both at different times. Archaeology shows how trade goods moved along these routes. Baltic amber appears in Volga region graves, while Caspian silver turns up in Sweden. Slavic furs fetched high prices in Arab markets. The Rus acted as middlemen, transporting goods between distant cultures. A single round trip might take 2 years, but could make a crew wealthy. Slavery formed a major part of this trade. Vikings captured people during raids or bought them from local leaders. Slavic slaves were especially valued in Islamic markets. The Arabic writer Ibn Fadlan described Rus traders bringing chains to secure their human cargo. Excavations at trading posts reveal iron shackles and locking collars among other merchant tools. River tactics differed from coastal raids. Ships moved in smaller groups to avoid notice. Attacks came at dawn when settlements were least prepared. The ruse favored swift strikes, followed by quick retreats upriver. Defenses were harder to organize, since rivers allowed attack from multiple directions. Local rulers eventually built fortified trading posts to control access. Winter changed everything. When rivers froze, ships were dragged ashore and repaired. Trade slowed but didn't stop. Sledges replaced boats for overland transport. Some Rus wintered in hill forts, waiting for spring thaw. These camps became permanent settlements over time, blending Scandinavian and Slavic cultures. Novgorod likely began as such a seasonal base. The Rus gradually became part of the local power structure. Arabic sources mention them leading military campaigns for Slavic rulers. Burial customs mixed Norse and Slavic elements, like boat graves with local pottery. By the 10th century, the Rus elite spoke a Slavic language, but kept Scandinavian-style names and some customs. This blending created the foundation for medieval Russia. River navigation required special skills beyond sea sailing. Pilots memorized landmarks and dangerous currents. At night, they might follow the scent of pine forests or the sound of waterfalls. Some crews kept caged birds to release when land might be near. If the bird circled back, open water still stretched far ahead. These small tricks made the difference between success and disaster. The Caspian Sea raids showed Viking daring at its peak. In 913, a Rus fleet of some 500 ships entered the sea through the Volga Delta. They raided for months along the southern coast, despite having no local knowledge. Muslim sources describe their sudden attacks and rapid withdrawals. The campaign ended when local forces trapped and destroyed much of the fleet on its return journey. Silver drove much of this activity. Islamic dirhams have been found by the thousands in Scandinavian hoards. Vikings tested coins by nicking them to check for base metal inside. Good silver was cut into pieces for smaller transactions. A merchant might carry small scales to weigh these fragments during trades. Wealth wasn't just accumulated. It was displayed as arm rings and necklaces worn daily. River travel wasn't all violence and profit. Ships carried diplomats, missionaries, and explorers too. Byzantine missionaries reached Kiev via these waterways, bringing Orthodox Christianity. Jewish traders from Khazaria traveled north to Novgorod. The system connected cultures that otherwise might never have met. Even during conflicts, some exchange of goods and ideas continued. The Rus legacy remains in Russian culture today. Their name gave the country its identity. Viking-founded cities like Kiev and Novgorod became centers of Russian power. The river routes they pioneered continued in use for centuries. Modern barges still follow some of the same paths those light wooden ships once took. Tonight, picture a Rus trader checking his silver by firelight. The river laps softly against the ship tied nearby. Somewhere downstream, new opportunities and dangers wait. But for now, there's just the quiet of the forest and the faint scent of pine on the night air. The same stars that guided Viking pilots shine unchanged overhead. Let their steady light and the river's gentle sounds carry you toward rest, as they did weary crews long ago. Tomorrow's journey can wait. For now, there is only the peaceful dark and the whisper of history moving through it. The flames rise as a Viking ship slowly sinks into the earth. This was how some of the most powerful Norsemen and women began their journey to the afterlife. Ship burials represented the ultimate honor for Vikings, a chance to sail into eternity with all the treasures and weapons they might need. One of the most complete ship burials was found at Gokstad in Norway. Excavators uncovered a 24-meter-long oak ship buried under a massive mound. Inside lay the body of a man in his 40s, surrounded by sacrificed horses and hunting dogs. 12 wooden shields still hung along the ship's sides where they were originally placed. The grave had been robbed long ago, but the ship itself told an important story. It showed how Vikings prepared for journeys beyond death with the same care they gave ocean voyages. Arab traveler Ahmad ibn Fadlan witnessed a very different Viking funeral in the 10th century. He described Rus traders burning a ship along the Volga River. A slave girl volunteered to join her master in death, drinking strong beer during days of feasting. When the time came, she entered a tent on the ship where 6 men had intercourse with her before strangling and stabbing her. Then they set the ship on fire. The ritual combined elements of honor, violence, and religious belief foreign to Ibn Fadlan's Islamic culture. These burials reflected deep beliefs about the afterlife. Vikings imagined a warrior's paradise called Valhalla, where the dead fought all day and feasted at night. Another realm, hell, received those who died of sickness or old age. A ship burial secured passage to the preferred destination while displaying earthly status. Some graves included items for all possible afterlife scenarios: weapons for battle, tools for farming, and coins for trade. The preparation took months in some cases. Workers had to fell trees, dig pits, and assemble burial goods. At Oseberg, they built an entire underground chamber from timber before lowering the ship into place. The 2 women buried there received everything from bronze cooking pots to carved wooden carts. Someone even included an iron rattle, perhaps to scare away evil spirits on the journey. Smaller versions existed for less prominent individuals. In some cases, families marked graves with boat-shaped stone arrangements when no actual ship was available. Others buried just the prow or stern timber to represent an entire vessel. These adaptations allowed people of varying status to follow the same spiritual traditions. Certain burials blended cultural influences. At Skar in Scotland, a Viking man was buried with both his sword and a Christian cross around 875 AD. This suggests the period when Norse religious beliefs blended with Christianity. The ship itself had been repurposed. Researchers found marks showing earlier repairs from heavy use. The psalm ships in Estonia revealed earlier burial practices predating the Viking Age. 2 ships contained the remains of over 40 warriors killed in battle around 650 AD. Some still had sword cuts on their bones and arrows lodged in their skeletons. The arrangement showed careful preparation despite being a mass grave. Bodies were positioned in neat rows with weapons and gaming pieces. Most ship burials were meant to last forever, but time had other plans. Norwegian farmers unknowingly built houses over ancient mounds for centuries. In the 1600s and 1700s, people occasionally opened mounds out of curiosity, sometimes damaging what they found. The Gokstad ship was actually discovered when boys dug into the mound looking for treasure. Modern archaeology tries to balance preservation with study when investigating these fragile sites. Women received elaborate ship burials too, though usually with different grave goods than men. Alongside weapons, female burials might contain looms, keys, or fine clothing. The Oseberg ship's older woman had a small leather pouch containing cannabis seeds, possibly for pain relief from her apparent medical conditions. Both women wore intricate silk garments that must have been imported from far away. Christian writers like Adam of Bremen described Viking funerals as barbaric. They focused on aspects like human sacrifice while ignoring the spiritual meaning behind the rituals. This outside perspective makes it harder to understand what Vikings truly believed about death and the afterlife. Surviving sagas written later offer some insight but come through a Christian cultural filter. Modern technology reveals new details about these burials. Scientists used CT scans on the Gokstad man's skeleton and found evidence of arthritis and old battle wounds. DNA analysis shows some buried warriors were related to each other. Chemical studies of teeth enamel trace where individuals grew up, revealing surprisingly diverse origins for some crews. The Vikings may have believed ships carried souls much as they carried living passengers. In Norse mythology, the god Frey had a ship that could fold up like cloth when not in use. Some burial ships show signs of being deliberately damaged or killed before burial, perhaps to release their spiritual essence. Others were carefully preserved as if for future use. Ship burials gradually disappeared as Christianity spread. The new religion preferred simple grave markers without pagan displays of wealth. Some later Viking graves show awkward mixtures, crosses placed next to Thor's hammers, or prayer books buried with swords. By the 11th century, most Norse people had abandoned the old ship burial tradition entirely. Tonight as you rest, picture one of these buried ships deep underground. The same moonlight that once guided living sailors now filters through soil onto silent prows. What dreams does a ship have when its sailing days are done? Perhaps the same peaceful stillness that waits for all journeys to end. Close your eyes and imagine the quiet of that eternal harbor. No storms, no waves, just the gentle embrace of earth where once there was sea. The Vikings who built these ships are long gone, but their beliefs about life's continuation still whisper in the artifacts they left behind. Let that thought comfort you as you drift towards sleep, as all travelers eventually must. Listen to the hush of imagined waves on a wooden hull far below. The ship is ready, the voyage prepared, but there's no rush. Morning will come when it comes. For now, there is only this moment of quiet between worlds. Breathe deep and let the earth's steady presence hold you as it holds those ancient ships, safe in their final mooring places beneath the grass. All is calm here at journey's end. The wind catches the woolen sail, snapping it tight as the ship surges forward. Viking longships combined sail and oar power for speed no other European ships could match at the time. When the wind failed, 30 rowers could keep moving. Each oar hole had a shield holder, so warriors could switch quickly between rowing and fighting. This flexibility gave them an edge in both travel and combat. Modern replicas help us understand Viking speed capabilities. Tests show these ships could reach 25 knots in perfect conditions with strong winds. That's about as fast as many small boats today. But for longer trips, crews maintained slower speeds between 3 and 6 knots to conserve energy. Even this steady pace let them cross the North Sea in just a few days when the weather cooperated. The shallow draft made these speeds more effective. While other ships needed deep water, Viking longships could sail in just 3 feet of water. This let them bypass normal routes and take shortcuts through areas others avoided. They could suddenly appear where nobody expected ships to come from, then vanish just as quickly into shallow marshes or up narrow rivers. Surprise attacks relied on this speed advantage. A fleet could appear at dawn, raid a coastal town, and be gone before local forces organized a defense. By the time word spread to neighboring settlements, the ships would already be far down the coast. Victims often had no warning until the dragon heads on the prows were already visible in their harbors. The construction details explain some of this performance. Builders used iron rivets to fasten overlapping oak planks tightly together. This made the hull stiff lengthwise while allowing some flex sideways to handle waves. Workers waterproofed the seams with animal hair and pine tar. A sail weighing over 100 kilograms provided strong propulsion when the wind was right. Each part worked together to create a ship that could handle both speed and rough seas. Navigation tactics maximized their speed advantage. Vikings often sailed before sunrise or after sunset to avoid detection. They used islands and coastlines for cover when approaching targets. On open water, they followed migrating birds or whale paths that often led the quickest way to land. Every decision focused on maintaining movement and surprise. River travel required different speed strategies. Against currents, crews rowed near banks where the flow was weakest. Going downstream, they used oars mainly for steering, while the current did most of the work. Portaging between rivers was the slowest part, requiring crews to unload cargo and physically drag the ship overland on logs. Even then, their light ships were easier to move than heavier vessels. Weather determined daily progress. Skilled sailors read waves and clouds to anticipate changes. They tightened or loosened sail tension as needed to keep steady speed without straining the mast. In fog or storms, they might lower sails completely and wait for better visibility rather than risk going off course. The goal was consistent movement rather than reckless speed. Speed meant survival during retreats too. After raids, ships needed to escape before local forces could organize pursuit. The same shallow draft that helped them approach unseen also let them flee up rivers or through marshes where heavier ships couldn't follow. Warriors could quickly shift from rowing to defending if needed, with weapons always within reach. Trade missions benefited from speed as well. Faster trips meant fresher cargo and more trading seasons each year. A merchant visiting multiple ports could outpace competitors by taking shortcuts others couldn't. Ships often traveled in convoys for safety, but even groups maintained good speed through coordinated rowing. Repairs at sea kept ships moving. Crews carried spare parts and materials for quick fixes. Leaks could be patched with animal fat and cloth while underway. Broken oars had ready replacements. This self-sufficiency meant fewer unplanned stops that might slow a journey. The stern design helped maintain speed in rough water, while the bow cut through waves cleanly. The stern stayed high enough to prevent following seas from swamping the ship. This balance let Vikings keep moving when other vessels would have to slow down or heave to. Sails were valuable property requiring careful maintenance. Woolen sails were treated with grease to repel water. Crews inspected them regularly for weak spots and repaired small tears before they spread. A damaged sail could drastically reduce speed, so this upkeep was essential for keeping schedules. Weight distribution affected performance too. Cargo and ballast were carefully placed to keep the ship balanced. Too much weight forward made steering difficult, while too much aft caused drag. Crews adjusted loads as supplies were used up during long voyages to maintain ideal trim. Night sailing was possible when needed. On clear nights, the North Star provided guidance while other stars helped track time passing. Crews took turns rowing in shifts to maintain progress. Torches or lanterns provided minimal light just to see nearby dangers without revealing their position to distant observers. Speed created psychological advantages as well. Stories of Viking ships appearing without warning spread fear along coasts. Potential targets might abandon exposed positions rather than risk attack. Some communities paid protection money simply to avoid the threat, never knowing if the ships were actually nearby. The design evolved over centuries to optimize speed. Later, longships had more streamlined shapes than earlier models. Builders experimented with sail sizes and mast positions to find the best combinations. Each generation incorporated lessons from actual voyages to make small improvements. Modern replicas continue testing these designs. Cruise sailing rebuilt longships confirm the speed accounts from historical records. They also discover small handling details that wouldn't appear in texts, like how certain wave conditions affect steering at high speeds. These experiments keep adding to our understanding. Speed ultimately served multiple purposes beyond rating. It enabled exploration of distant lands like Iceland and Greenland. It made regular trade routes viable across the North Sea. And it allowed quick communication between scattered Viking settlements. The same technology that brought fear to coasts also connected a wide network of cultures and economies. Tonight, as you rest, imagine the quiet rhythm of oars dipping in unison. Picture the sail adjusting subtly to catch the best wind. The same stars that guided Viking navigators still shine now, unchanged after all these centuries. Their ships are gone, but the lessons in efficiency and adaptation remain. Let the steady, purposeful movement of those ancient vessels ease your mind towards sleep. There's peace in the thought of something moving cleanly through its element, perfectly suited to its purpose. The night holds no threats now, only the quiet darkness where once proud ships raced across moonlit waves. Breathe deep, and let that calm settle over you as it did over weary crews reaching safe harbor after long passages. Tomorrow's voyage can wait. For now, simply rest.